So the first object I'm going to cut out of the tracing paper is the sphere. And I'm going to make it about 4 inches wide. The size that I make the sphere is going to determine the size of the rest of the objects. So if I make it too big, it won't fit on the paper properly. And if I make it too small, then it's going to be a very small composition. So I'm just using my see-through ruler here. You can use any ruler. I like the see-through ruler because I can see through it to make 4 inches. So I'm using just a simple cross, equidistant cross. Then the other thing I want to do is, I could draw a circle between these 2 or 4 points, but it'll be easier if I have another 4 points to work with. So I'm just going to line up my ruler on the diagonal here and put that 2-inch point right in the middle, and then draw another line this way, and another line this way. So now I've got more points to join. It just makes it easier to get the circle better. You want this to be as circular as possible. You can use a compass, but the beauty of doing it this way is that now I have some marks on my circle that I can use when I'm measuring my other objects. Remember, our circle is going to be our unit of measurement for the rest of the objects. There we go. You can see it's not perfectly divided, but that's okay, as long as I'm really getting a circle out of it. So now I'm going to cut it out. I'm just going to pause the video while I do that. Now that I have my circle cut out, I can use it to measure out the first bottle, which is the wine bottle. So I'm going to start by making a mark at the bottom of the circle, go up to the top, make another mark, go up to the top of that one, make another mark. Now you can see that I'm actually going right up to the top of my paper here. This is something you need to be aware of, that if you're making a taller object, it may not fit on the paper. You may have to turn the paper. So it's actually that absolute top of the tracing paper right there is about where I want to make my top. It's just a little over 2.5 circles tall. Now I'll make my line right here on the bottom. Again, the see-through ruler really helps you get things lined up nicely. Now what I need to do is measure the width, and my width on this one is just a tiny bit over 3/4. So I'm just going to line my circle up here, and I'll make a mark on one side, and then 3/4 would be right about here. I'm going to make it a little bit wider than that. Again, this is a rough measurement. It's not meant to be perfectly exact, but it'll get you into the ballpark, which is exactly what you want. Really what we're talking about in this exercise is a lot about scale and placement. But scale to start with. Scale and proportion. Now I'll come over here and I will mark that line. And now I'm going to cut this one out. My next object is the skinny bottle, and it's about the same height as the wine bottle. So I can use the same measurements for that. I've got my line down here, and I'm just going to use the absolute top of the paper right there. But the width is quite a bit narrower on the skinny bottle. It's about half of a sphere. So I will make that mark on here. This one's easy because I've got a line right down the middle of the sphere here, of the circle. Now I will make my height lines. Again, I want to make sure that they're parallel to the edge of the paper. It's easy to do with a see-through ruler. You can just line up the line right along that edge. And then here, My see-through ruler is exactly 2 inches wide, so that gives me an easy target there. All right, now I'm going to cut this one out. My next object is the jug, and the jug is quite a bit wider than the other bottles, but it's also a little shorter. I've actually made my marks already for the height, so there's 1, 2, and actually this is the correct one right here, half. That one was, I'm sorry, that's about 1/4 and that's about 1/2 of the sphere. So now what I need to do is figure out the measurement of the width. So this one is about 1 1/8, very little bit wider than one circle. So I'm going to make a 1 circle mark here. And then it's just, see how I can use that see-through aspect of the tracing paper to help me out there. It's right about there. So this is the mark here and here. And this is the mark for the top. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you don't have to watch me do all this part. My last object is the Coke bottle, and it's much smaller than the other bottles. It's only about 1 3/4 of a sphere high. So I'll make that on my paper. And by the way, I recommend that you write down the name of the bottle on the piece of paper that you made the box out of, because there's going to be a lot of scrap and you might not know what's what. So just write the name or some kind of indication that you don't want to throw that piece out. So there's 1, 2 would be right about there. I can see that I want to make that bottle about that tall. It's just a little bit higher than 3/4, so right about there. So that's my height. Now my width is pretty narrow, but again, you want to always measure from the widest point. This bottle has a slightly swelled interior. It's not a straight line. So I'm going to use my sphere. It's about 1/2 a sphere wide at its widest point. So I can just make those marks on here. See how much smaller that is. So now, again, make my marks. I'm going to go ahead and pause. So here we have all of our simple shapes for the bottles, and we also have our sphere. Now before we start actually drawing the bottles inside these boxes, we have to take one other thing into consideration, and that is placement. So we've worked with scale and proportion, and now we need to work with placement. So I'm going to switch now to a different video to show you about that.